Within the heart of every human is a driving factor that goes by many names and is featured in many ways. Some call it a survivalist instinct that is innate within every person and a key element in the survival of humanity itself. Others refer to it as competitive spirit, ambition, durability, tenacity, motivation. It manifests itself in examples found all throughout history. It kept early man alive in extreme elements saturated with great predators. It has beat within the chests of the soldiers of conflict in the form of the warrior's heart. It is present in all of us when we face seemingly indomitable odds in our lives as the it factor to our successes. And it is a permanent resident in the very core of all we come to respect as champions. It was a factor that shone forth strongly in the life of Firefighter-Paramedic Matthew Rominger. From his earliest of days, he embraced and idolized the athletic spirit. Athlete, he would proclaim in his many stories of the trials and tribulations of the court, the rink, the pitch, the war-torn battlefield, and the streets of communities he wore his many badges of service through. Bear was also quick to point out the triumphs he saw come from the strife of competitions and conflicts. He loved the underdog, who fought through adversity and themselves to arrive at a place of glory reserved for the champion within them they had finally broken free. This competitive drive carried into every element of his life. Anyone who has become a paramedic, made it through the California Highway Patrol Academy, or persevered to become a firefighter will tell you how difficult any one of these things are. Bear's drive was so strong, he did all the above and more. Bear was an athlete in every sense of the word. Prior to health issues, he still powered strongly through to continue working long past the points where many had given up on his chances. Bear showed the drive of an athlete again and again. He chased and caught criminals, ran into burning buildings, intervened in life-threatening situations, and answered 911 emergency calls for help for over 3 decades, under 3 badges, and as a member of 3 thin lines that are strengthened today because of what he gave. But Bear did not just keep this drive to himself. Whether in the form of a love language to his children, a way to serve his community through programs, teaching the next person down from him in a career field, or even during the simplest pickup game being played around a hoop behind a firehouse, Bear coached athletes. He built people up and instilled within those who would listen and adhere that same athletic spirit that drove him in all he did. However, Bear understood an important line that much of what we deal with within society today would have us blur: the difference between an athlete and a champion. Bear knew that many could do the work, prepare themselves in every aspect, and play the game as hard as they were capable, yet only one side emerged victorious. He did not believe in participation trophies beyond recognizing that what was within someone to fight hard and lose could become what was molded into that which won another day. He showed this every time he himself lost anything. He picked himself up, corrected what he could, and hit the field again, returned to the court, and stepped back onto the ice. Bear knew that true victory was earned in adversity, and the only thing he detested was weakness and giving up. Bear also knew this was the very thing that made the first responder special. He knew that many could make it through the training, power through the academics, and outlast the hiring process. But he also knew these were the junior varsity levels, and that the varsity level would be where the ability to make a difference was truly present. A truth of the career fields of law enforcement, firefighting, and emergency medical services is well known for those of us within them. There are far more of us who will do this for only a short while than those who will last through multiple decades of service. These jobs are mentally, physically, and emotionally tough, and all of whom you see today in a uniform are athletes. For it is that same drive that sets us apart. It is not what we are prepared to do, for many prepare and are never tested. It is not what we do, for there are countless stories every year of people turning into heroes who have nothing to do with our career field. What makes a first responder special is the next day. Like the athlete returning to the court after a hard loss or a string of losses, we also face our inner temptations to give up and choose instead to pursue another win. We come back after the bad guys get away from us, after the lives we grasp to save slip through our fingers, after the fire gets too far beyond our control. Like the athlete determined to win, failure is never considered an option, but its ugly presence is a reality. And the athlete and first responder share that phoenix-like quality to rise above their failure's ashes to relentlessly pursue victory, often taking the burden of that pursuit upon their own shoulders again and again. The line between an athlete and a champion is not thin. It is a long and hard road, no matter what point from which each competitor has the chance to start. It is a road laden with its own pains, suffering, hardships, and sacrifices. In many ways, that last one is often the game changer: sacrifice. For the athlete, the question is what they are willing to put themselves through to obtain the crown. For the first responder, the question is what we are willing to do to uphold our oaths and honor the badges over our hearts. Our thin lines are thin because of the few who help us to answer that question before we ever must face that choice. Just as the champion of yesterday serves to inspire the champion of tomorrow, first responders are inspired by the champions of our past. Athletes turned into champions will tell you that they gave their run to ultimate victory everything they had and left it all out there on the courts, the fields, and the ice. Our champions cannot speak, for they have truly given all they had. Our champions are those who sacrificed everything that others may live, giving their lives along the way. Last year, everyone working in first responder roles was given the game of our very lives. An opponent we could not see rose to fight our whole world and brought us the toughest matchup seen in our land in over a century. And the question of what it would take to win was never so unclear, as all of those working the streets of this nation had to choose whether they would continue to work in the uncontrolled environments they called their response areas, or understandably seek the safety of their own homes in so difficult a fight. Many made the very difficult choice to remain safe enough to ensure the fulfillment of other responsibilities they personally knew had to take precedent, and we find no fault with their choices against such uncertainties. Yet, throughout the United States of America, 911 lines kept being answered. Radio calls for police help continued even as the thin blue line faced some of its most trying of times. Dispatches for medical aid went through the roof, yet emergency medical services marched forward as a strong but thin white line. The thin red line faced many new challenges for firefighters, as fires burned longer before empty streets so much as presented someone to notice and call for help. While the entire world ground to a halt and our American way of life stopped, the phones kept ringing, the radios kept beeping, the tones kept dropping, and empty streets remained protected by those who swore to guard them, those who refused to stop playing the game, those athletes whose spirit of competition would not allow them to stand idly by while their fellow humans lost their hope of victory. Like so many others, Bear knew this was the time. As a former law enforcement officer, he knew this was an ultimate threat. As a paramedic, he knew this was going to be the hardest opponent. As a firefighter, he knew this was going to possibly take everything. He knew the line between athletes and champions was sacrifice, and he joined together with his fellow first responders, and he took the field. And now we are here. The game may not be over, but the outcome is clear. The score is tallied, and we now await the clock to run out to finalize victory. A victory that came at great costs and even greater sacrifices. Yet today we will come away knowing that throughout this horrible test of our might, the thin red, thin blue, and thin white lines are a little thicker. Because of people like Bear and all of those who fell in the line of duty to this battle, the difference between our athletes and our champions is made clearer through their sacrifices. Sacrifice makes an athlete a champion. Sacrifice makes a first responder a true hero. And what keeps the rest of us first responders returning to answer the cries of our communities in the days, weeks, months, and years that follow tragically beautiful days like today is that hope of victory. Will the first responders of the thin red, thin blue, and thin white lines please rise? If you are willing to rise to the challenges I am about to present, will you please respond with a unified "I will" at the end of my prompts? Will you recall the oaths you made when you accepted your badges and let the examples of champions like Bear inspire you to rise to the challenges you may one day face? Will you do everything you can to ensure that you safely go home while knowing that should you one day be asked to give it all for the sake of others, you will pay that price willingly with honor? Will you carry forward from today to continue to answer the radios, the tones, and the cries for aid within your response areas? Then Firefighter-Paramedic Matthew Michael Rominger, Brother Bear, you are relieved a champion. Victory is assured, your sacrifice is not in vain, and we will take it from here.